Welcome into this football preview between the Division II #1 team and the #8 team, according to the final regular season rankings. I'm BJ Larmoke, sports editor of the East Texan, and I'm joined by
Tommy Wita, the sports editor for the MSU Reporter.
And a big game coming up this Saturday, the second seed in Super Region 4, Minnesota State Mankato against the fifth seed, A&M Commerce Lions. And Tommy, how did the Mavericks get to this point in the season?
Well, the Mavericks went 13-0 this season. They got the #2 seed in the regional rankings. Some people were kind of offended by the rankings, but it came down to who you play, and they only played 3 ranked opponents in the regular season. So far in the playoffs, they played a tough game against CSU Pueblo, where they went overtime and won that game 16-13. And they're just coming off a 63-21 blowout win. And both of those games are at home, so they haven't had any air mileage put on at all. So that'll help them. And besides Sioux Falls and CSU Pueblo this season, they've won every game by at least double digits. So.
Yeah, for the Lions had a different route to get to this point. Actually, you said air mileage. Just last week, the third longest road trip in Division II was from Commerce, Texas to Ellensburg, Washington, where the Lions took down the top-seeded Central Washington team that was the #1 seed in the region, and that had to at least give y'all something to be happy about, because you don't have to travel and you get to host another home playoff game.
Yeah, it's definitely made a difference so far. So hopefully I can continue going into this weekend.
Yeah, your last round opponent was the only team to beat the Lions this season in Midwestern State, and that was a pretty good thumping from what I heard.
Yeah, it was. The Mavericks really stuck to their game plan early, and by halftime, it was already a double-digit game, and the Mavericks defense kind of just took over after that. So,
yeah, the second round game for the Lions was a lot different than their first round game. First round game, they were up in Winona to take on Winona State. They got a couple early touchdowns, and then the long form of defense kind of took over. They won that game 20-6. Last week, they had to come back from a 28-7 halftime deficit, and they tied it up with 3 seconds to go in regulation and won in double overtime 34-31 on a walk-off field goal. So hearts racing, hearts thumping for the Lions. They've never gotten to the third round in the playoffs before in program history. So everybody's feeling alive and well and ready to cheer on the Lions around here this week. And so it's been an unusual atmosphere, but one that it feels like it's been building up to every year for the Lions since 2013, when their head coach Colby Carthel was hired by the university.
Yeah, the Mavericks kind of have the same kind of time frame. They've been head coached by Todd Hoffner now for a while now, but in 2014, they reached the national championship game and eventually lost to CSU Pueblo. So that win this year in the first round was a huge boost for the team, as they were looking to get revenge on that. So,
and now we'll go talk a little bit about some strategies that each team uses. What kind of offense does Minnesota State Mankato have?
So they typically run the ball more often than not. They're the 13th best ranked overall offense in NCAA Division II. Their run game is the third most yards per game at 297.5 yards per game. And lead up between 2 running backs. The first has missed 3 games, but through it all, he's still rushed for 1,411 yards in 10 games. Redshirted freshman Justin Torremina, has also 1,134 rushing yards. And it all kind of comes down to the quarterback play. They have 2 young quarterbacks in sophomore Ryan Schlichty and redshirt freshman J.D. Ikawa. Head coach Todd Hoffner isn't afraid to play both, as he will probably have both come in at certain times, and he likes to play the hot hand. Also on the receiving end, they have 2 stud receivers, in senior Ty Dennis and sophomore Shane Zylstra. Dennis has 40 catches for 494 yards and 3 touchdowns this year. And Zylstra, just a sophomore, he has 47 catches for 787 yards. I believe today is when the Harlan Hill Trophy finalists are released. But Zylstra is also a nominee for that trophy. Pretty much recaps their offense there.
Yeah, the Lions have their own Harlan Hill trophy finalist in quarterback Luis Perez. He is definitely a playmaker that the Lions rely a lot on. All-time leader in almost every passing category in school history, and he's only been here for 2 years. Having a great season, most passing yards in a season, most passing touchdowns. It's hard not to root for him. Actually, a great story. He wasn't a high school football player. He was a bowler. So he comes from the lanes to the field and definitely had a little bit of a transitional period there. He has a core running back behind him, Crandall Hale, that he's used to having more positive games than not. His first round playoff game, he got over 100 yards against Winona. And then last week he was a little bit more stymied by the Central Washington defense. But the Lions aren't afraid to mix in the run, even when it doesn't look like it's working, because that's just another wrinkle to throw your way. Big receivers that Perez will target actually include Vincent Hobbs. He's a transfer from Colorado, the Division I school, and Perez will find him quite often, I will imagine. And thing about Hobbs is he's a big guy and he's hard to tackle. So when he gets in space, it's going to take quite a few Mavericks to bring him down, I'm guessing. And then obviously one of his favorite targets is Buck Wilson, and Buck Wilson is a local product. Actually went to school in Commerce and then stuck to close to home to go to school here. So offensively, the Lions are more of a pass attack, but they're not afraid to mix in the rushing attack when it needs to be used.
Yeah, the Mavericks defense has shown that they can handle passing attacks. Their biggest win that pretty much set the tone for the season was going to UMD earlier this season, their first ranked opponent that they faced. And they faced a pretty good quarterback there. And they came out on top and they shut down the passing game, and they've shown instances where they could do that. So it'll be a good challenge for them on Saturday.
Yeah, the Lions have played 4 ranked opponents so far this season, and with the exception of their loss to Midwestern State, they're 3-1 in those games and on a 2-game winning streak in the playoffs against ranked opponents. So defensively, the Lions have a lot of talented playmakers. They're not getting the individual awards and recognition, but the team itself is one of the best in Division II. And statistically wise, it's going to be very tough, especially with fresh legs, for the Mavericks to try to move the ball downfield. I know it's going to be a war of attrition on Saturday, but the Lions have been able to consistently throughout the season get playmakers and reps and not try to wear down any one individual. So that's with kind of a stacked defense that the Lions use. They have multiple playmakers that they'll substitute in and out, and not everybody's going to play every snap on defense. And so that helps keep players fresh and for this point in the season. And it looks like that strategy has worked really well for Carthel's squad.
Yeah, the Mavericks defense, they kind of go by the same kind of mantra where it's really just a team. They all have the same goal. They're the 5th best defense statistically in NCAA Division II. It could be any given guy that comes out and makes a big play. Senior linebacker Jerry Nash, big guy. He leads the team in 66 total solo tackles. He also has 3 fumble recoveries. He's pretty much the defensive leader on that team, along with senior defensive lineman Evan Perezo. He has 18.5 tackles for loss and 12 sacks, so he's definitely a force on that defensive line. And then in the secondary, there's safeties like Corey Brent, and then corner Larry Moore. Both of them anchor the secondary there, so they're going to have their hands full on Saturday. Another key thing about this defense is they do not let the opponent extend their drives. On third down conversions this year, they are the 8th best in allowing the least amount of successful third down conversions. So that will also be key, as I know the passing game is going to be relevant.
How did the Mavericks look special teams wise? Is there something that the Mavericks use with kickoff coverage or kick return? Do they have a talented returner in the special teams game?
The kick return and kickoff, it's kind of been stagnant for the most part. They've done a good job. They haven't allowed it. They haven't scored any touchdowns this year, but they put themselves in good field position for the most part. I would say like the biggest highlight for the special teams would have to be the junior kicker, Casey Bednarski. He has one strong leg. He was actually featured on SportsCenter this year as he tied a record-long 63-yard kick, and he's 23 of 24. So he could be a major key late in the game, as he won the game against the first-round opponent, CSU Pueblo, with a kick in overtime. So
yeah, the Lions have a really good kicker, and junior Christoph Martinez. Martinez was the one that booted home not only the game, the go-ahead field goal in the first overtime, but the game-winning kick in the second overtime. Leading scorer in school history already, and he's just a junior. He's got a long way to go in terms of how high he's going to climb in the Lone Star Conference ranks and nationally, trying to compete for some of those records that have been set and held. So over 300 points in just 3 seasons, that's a lot. And only he's first all-time in points, first all-time in extra points, and he's closing in on the all-time field goals mark as well. Special teams wise, kick return, the Lions use some of their talented playmakers on offense on special teams as well. Special teams is definitely something that Carthel and his group will emphasize, because a good special teams play can be the difference in the game. And I would say you honestly will not be surprised one way or the other when it comes to fourth down, when it comes to kickoffs, whether you see him kick it deep or kick it onside. You're not surprised by it, even if you are surprised by it, because he's not afraid to gamble with the dice and do some crazy things that most coaches wouldn't. So returner, the Lions use Buck Wilson mostly for kick returns, and he did have a kickoff return for a touchdown earlier this year against West Texas A&M, 100 yards, and that was the first time in almost 60 years that the Lions have had a kick return of that long go for a touchdown. So special teams definitely going to be a big part in this game. I know you said it's looking like it's going to be a little bit warmer than it was a couple weeks ago in Minnesota for the first round playoff game. What's your prediction for not only the game, but is it going to look nice? Is it going to be warm? What are players going to come out with, no long sleeves and shorts on, or what's it going to be like on Saturday?
It might be a little colder for Texas A&M Commerce, but for Minnesota State, I think it'll be good weather here. It'll be probably mid 40s to lower 50s. So the conditions will be nice. It'll be sunny. It'll be a good day for a football game. But with my prediction, I feel like since the traveling bug has kind of hit the Lions, I don't know if the fatigue is going to settle in or not, but the Mavericks are kind of sitting pretty with another home game. The task is going to be tall for the defense to stand up for the passing offense against. I think the Mavericks will pull through 31-24.
It was a good touchdown game. I in terms of fatigue, 2 straight road games, even with a long trek to them, the Lions have proven that they can go on the road and be road warriors. Only 1 loss all year on the road. So that gives me hope that the Lions will at least be able to hang with the Mavericks. It's going to be tough, obviously, when you're trying to face as good a team as Minnesota State Mankato, #1 in the country. You're going to have your best game in order to pull off the upset. And I think it's going to come down to a special teams play late in the game. And my money's on Colby Carthel's squad with special teams plays. So I got to say that the Lions win on a field goal. I wouldn't say in an overtime period, but it'll be late in the game, a go-ahead field goal, and the Lions defense comes away with a big stop and comes out of there with the regional championship and gets a 28-24 win.
Yeah, it should be a close game throughout. So I don't foresee a blowout like last week, but
no, and
I didn't see that last week either. So
yeah, that's what I was about to say. That not a lot of people would have seen a blowout coming. In fact, a lot of people that we were hearing were talking possibly about upset alert. I haven't heard quite as much talk about that this week, but it's Division II, it's college football. Any given Saturday, you just don't know.
That's right. Yep, you never know. So
we're hoping for a good game, and we're hoping that one of these two teams is going to come away with it all. So for you, I know you want the Mavericks to be national champions. For me, I want the Lions to be national champions. So
yeah, it's tremendous to follow them all season and see the progress that they've made. I mean, I know at the beginning of the season we lost some key seniors here and there, but look at us now, undefeated. So it all comes down to the coaching and Hoffner and the support around the community here.
Yeah, when you're one of 8 remaining teams, it's definitely a grind to this point, and it's going to be a grind all the way through. So I want to thank Tommy for being with us today here on the East Texan Online, and obviously checking out the reporter from Minnesota State Mankato and get some content, read up on everything that they're able to accomplish up there, and stick with us here on the East Texan Online. So I want to thank Tommy for being here today. Thank you so much for talking about this football game coming up on Saturday.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me, BJ.
Absolutely. And stick with us. We'll have more content throughout as the football game gets closer and closer. I'm BJ Larmoke signing off. Thanks for watching.